Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the continuation of the Milwaukie Poetry Series, this 14th season. I'm Tom Hogan, the coordinator of the series, and I want to welcome you very much for being here. Thank you. This particular reading has been a long time in coming. Quinton's reading originally was scheduled in May of 2020, but we had to postpone those spring readings because of the pandemic, which you all know about. Now we're doing them as virtual readings, but we're absolutely delighted that Quinton is our poet. She's here tonight, and we are going to be able to have her reading. I hope you are all safe and well in this extremely difficult time. Before I introduce Quinton, I want to say some thanks. Thanks to the City of Milwaukie, who has supported this series from the beginning. Thanks to the Letting Library. We are a committee of the Letting Library, and the Letting Library has been very supportive of the series also from the beginning. Finally, thanks to the Milwaukie Poetry Series Committee. Two of the members from the committee are here with us tonight. But as you know, and you hear me say regularly, you don't have something happen unless you have a group of people working on it. I also want to thank Willamette Falls Media. We are here tonight live streaming from the Willamette Falls Media Center in Oregon City. And thanks for all the great work that they have done. Now, to introduce Quinton. Quinton Hallett writes and edits from Noti, Oregon. She has 4 chapbooks: Quarry, Sliver Quench, Refuge from Flux, Stranger by the Hour. She founded Fern Rock Press Falls in 2004, and her work appears or is forthcoming in journals and anthologies, including Willowa Journal, Cirque, The Edge of Awe, and December. She has coordinated a reading series, high school poet visits, and presented workshops for the Oregon Poetry Association. Quinton received residencies from Caldera and Soapstone. In 2013, an animated short film by award-winning filmmaker John Hogsey featured one of her poems, To the Long Ago Maybes. Her first full-length collection, Mrs. Schrodinger's Breast, From Utter Chaos, was nominated for the Oregon Book Award in 2016. An aspect of this collection shifts physics vocabulary to some of the intractable matters of body and heart. A former art administrator for the Smithsonian Institution and the Armand Hammer Foundation, Quinton has lived on both coasts and in the Midwest. She's been happily ensconced in the Coast Range foothills for 30 years and counting. Of her current work, Quinton states, I have been working for some time on the notion of triage as metaphor. I'm as drawn to what is discarded or jettisoned in order to save something as I am in the thing saved. We're going to hear from Quinton after the reading. We are going to have a question and answer period. So we will have some questions from the audience that is here, and you can send questions in on the chat, and we will try to get to some of them. Would you join me in welcoming our poet for the evening, Quinton Hallett. Quinton.
Thank you, Tom. Indefatigable host, and thank you for keeping us readers on track with the series. I want to also give my thanks to the Milwaukie Poetry Series Organizing Committee and the poets I follow or join in this 14th season. The Letting Library, I look forward to being in your wonderful new building, and the City of Milwaukie. I'm grateful to Joshua and Willamette Falls Media for making this happen tonight. Hooray. And I also want to thank first responders and second and third or 52nd responders and Anthony Fauci. I want to thank Zoom and other virtual tech for keeping classes, poetry readings, lectures, reunions, and alas, goodbyes streaming to all corners. I want to thank teachers, series hosts, poetry groups, YouTube tutorials, museum curators, the Smithsonian Panda Cam, Hamilton, and Carol Burnett to keep us sane. This reading brings me back to the microphone on the cusp of being with you all in person. But because it's still virtual, there are many more of you now, and I'm grateful for that, all of you out there. I'll structure the reading tonight. Having prepared for the third time for this reading, I decided to organize it into a sort of triptych, poems from before, during, and after the initial lockdown and quarantine, but not necessarily in that order. We all got mixed up, and more on the triptych concept later. I'll read from my full-length Mrs. Schrodinger's Breast, my newest chapbook, Stranger by the Hour, and some during and late quarantine work, and I hope it's a good mix. It has been fascinating, really fascinating to review older poems for this evening with the COVID filter overlaid. I think that will happen to many of you as you look at titles or your work. And now that we're living firmly in the Zoom era, I have the notion that maybe the poems tonight will be in their own Zoom-like boxes, like participant boxes, each one different, each able to be heard or muted, chatted about or not, and they're all connected by the fact that we're in this together. All right, so I used to begin most of my readings since my book, since Mrs. Schrodinger came out with this poem. I used to end with this poem. So I think I want to upend all that and start with it. Dodge, burn. For the right exposure, shoot the gnarl, tinker a light whirl. Between subject and desired effect, shine extra moon. In the warm pillowcase, a clogged waterfall. To adjust the cumbrous press of doubt, there's a caffeine mountain, some owls dopplering, and geese dusky, geese white. Darkening the new page, black lines, a bird abacus, waiting for sun to count wings, to burn through. That's a nice beginning. All right, then the next poem is titled Self-Portrait as Bruise. And this might have been a broadside if we were in the Leading Library, but this is now a virtual broadside, and you can cast it in any font you want, you can do whatever you want, but this is Self-Portrait as Bruise. A blood whisper, I am the younger sister of impact. The lost hour saving daylight mourns. Mildew is my second cousin, once removed. I'm often surreptitious, the small chameleon on the back of a thigh or comma below the ear. If there is a fresh pear on the counter, I will press into it my yellow kiss. I've been called reticent, understudy to hostage and hospice, but I prefer to yell when someone sees I'm here. Thumbprint or thunderhead, my longing will never be taken for love, though it is similar in the way it uses quiet fury to aggravate intention and pools with me in one place far too long. Self-portrait. And there are several self-portraits in the Mrs. Schrodinger collection. And I think because of the past year and what many of us have been through, this topic might be relevant to more than just me. Self-portrait as insomnia. You know me, Morpheus's busybody aunt. I rattle around, setting quicksand along the verges of night. Disenfranchised from the land of Nod, no one blinks asleep in my house. No napping, no vampires in their fragrant mahogany coffins, No sweet baby, crescent eyes sealed shut, or lovers postcoital parched drowse. I reprogram day for night at random, render Ambien useless as warm milk. To be honest, though, flattered by rapt attention from all my little midnight monkey minds, I do weary of the incessant push to entertain and this diabolical graveyard shift. I think Insomnia. These next couple poems, I'm just going to go right into the mid or beginning of quarantine. A couple of these are going to be in a new pandemic anthology that the Oregon Poetry Association has just released. And I look forward to seeing all the other voices that will have been trying to write something cogent during this time. From March to whenever later. She carries too many things in each hand up or down the stairs, avoiding banisters that might save her life. She sits down in the one chair with a weak back, and it snaps in distress. She forgets to turn her vest right side out, neglects washing sleep from her eyes. Unable to draw a straight line or address an envelope without reaching its edge prematurely, she apologizes to every tea leaf for leaving it to steep and steep and steep and steep, steep. Lots of tea. Okay, another one of those, that period. The word in the title, Cartouche. If you don't know it, Cartouche, C-A-R-T-O-U-C-H-E. It's an oblong or oval shape which contains a set of ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, and usually represents the name of the title of a king or a queen. So I'm stealing that word. Cartouche in the time of COVID. Cartwheels are underrated, especially if care means stop and rock is never escarpment. One COVID cartouche can trump any card in the deck, and carp are coyer than cartography lets on. Discard the bad seed and it will turn cargo or carmine in the streets of your great cities. Carnations can be underrated too, but carrots do not fail to mitigate. Carve your name in a fog bank before it carries you away. And that poem was part of something called, it was part of the Two Sylvias Press prompt last April. And that was a marvelous way to just keep going in the early time of COVID. And one of the prompts for that day was to find a word and use it in every word you could in each line of the poem. So car and cartouche, etc., and carve your name and carries you away. So it was really fun, and it seemed to do something fun. This next poem is very recent, and we're still in this phase. The occasional poem, 2020, 2021. Occasionally, we percolate spring until it is thick with fall and fills hungry cellar jars. Occasionally, we jostle midnight, urging it to lay its velvet coat across the beds of sick children. Sometimes we hijack insomnia to the south of France, where we force it to eat subjunctive tartare. Often, you will find us pantomiming a striptease at 2 a.m. to the slow beat of horseradish. Rarely do we deadhead quarrels by doing away with the neighbors' mandolins and their vexing teapot whistles. Regularly now, we change our minds about bequests and leave all our daft alphabets to the feral cat who lopes by daily. And occasionally, yes, we do get serious and stop speaking metaphorically about COVID and elections for fear they might hear us and appear at the door, put a stop to any ungodly utterance, ready to leap from our lost all sense of taste tongues. So, enough of that. The next poem is from a small chapbook of 8 poems featuring poems to the stranger. And this was a big project the Oregon Humanities had several years ago to write letters to a stranger, and then Oregon Humanities would exchange the letters for you. So you might write your letter as a poem or not and send it to the stranger, and you might get an answer. But I just, these poems are to any stranger that wants to answer to it. But it also, even though it's a few years old, this collection was out in 2018, it seems to speak to the confusion amplified and the word salad that some of our brains have been in for a while. So, dear stranger, I hope this finds you not in a well. Yesterday, since you did not ask, I ate rockfish for dinner. It was baked with sweet onions. Basmati rice was involved, and green salad, some Malbec. Rockfish, onions, rice, salad, Malbec, orange juice, grapefruit, granola. Yesterday, my elbow met bath bubbles, hot water, a black towel, and plush white bathrobe, flannel sheets, a blue shirt, the back of a leather chair. Elbow bubbles, hot water, towel, robe, sheet, shirt, chair, medulla, and cerebellum. In a hot bath of onions, the rockfish with no shirt cried for Malbec, wrapped in a black towel. Rice pelted the back of a leather chair like salad croutons tossed. Gertrude Stein was invited to dinner, but she died so very long ago. Alice was indisposed. What is the opposite of identity theft? Exclamation, deforestation, cremation, incantation? Potholder, cold shoulder, file folder, or dodecahedron parallelogram quark? 5 billion years of bang? We ought to care. Time's up. Will it ever come down? Let us please take care wherever it wants to go. Sincerely mine, the inscrutable night sky with minuscule, unclaimed carry-on. So, no COVID there. I chose this poem tonight because of the title more than the subject. So in its Zoom box, here it is, Museum of Oddities. The dog split before I did, ran away for a year. I can't recall if someone we knew took him in while you and I spat out seeds and rind of a spoiled marriage. Before he ran, Chadwick, sweet marzipan, cringed inside our gallery of extinct courtesy. Our phantom anniversaries, I Google you, neighborhoods you might haunt. Curator of long ago pain, I noticed the oddest museums popping up all over. Corvettes, Pez, the Derwent pencil. There's even a cyber museum of oddities, where a dagger of friendship is displayed with the pelvis of Pelagius, both quests in the Elder Scrolls shivering aisles. It might be time to join one of those quests and raise the Museum of Bicker. Who needs more of the same old saws in the gift shop, the same abandoned dogs left out back to beat? Thank you. Okay, travel and love and mothers in this next section. Travel, remember travel? Travel. We're getting close. And another, just informing this poem, I think in the big purge and cleaning and Marie Kondoing of our houses, we find lots of artifacts and heirlooms, and their stories are leaping for air, just like the rest of us. When my mother stole the ashtrays in 1954, what did she really steal? The Tour d'Argent's oblong sides cradle its iconic central image. Round as a Roman breast, the Hotel Eden's is florid with incised designs. From an unidentified classy hostelry, a luminous seafoam square now holds hotel soap, also stolen. Too young to have heard her stories of candlelit dinners, or with whom mother traveled to the south of France, now that she's gone, I make them up. On my desk, clunky Campari and Hotel Intercontinental Lisbon overflow with loose francs, escudos, lira. I never asked why she smoked so much, or why her bags were too heavy to carry when she came home. And a little more spice for the mother. This is from 10 years ago. What Lovers Leave. A book of poems in another language. A crystal carafe with a stopper which never fit. A guitar melody without the guitar. An unstrung tennis racket. The disgruntled doorman who opened a borrowed apartment on Park Avenue. L'amour fou in the library. The widely touted unbreakable ashtray, smithereens at my feet. Mother had her own archive. There were uncles. One gave her his signet ring and game pieces she hid in old suitcases. Her codes on the family calendar did not mean symphony, museum opening. They meant the red silk, the black lace. Curators of circumstances, we thrive on something to polish, something to mend, something to be accountable for over bourbon and grilled cheese sandwiches. Leaving us nothing would not have been an option. So we hold on to these things. We do. Oh, and then here is, here's the poem is called To the Long Ago Maybes. And the story about this poem, John Hougsey, the animated filmmaker who, he lived in Portland for a while, he's from the Northwest, and he was down in Santa Barbara, and he saw this poem, and he asked me if he could make a short 1-minute animated film of this poem, and what an honor to and his work is fantastic. And I'll give you the link to the YouTube site so that you can see the little film afterward. To the long ago maybes. Who, I wonder, were those pulsing boys calling me out of the house wet on New England summer evenings? Which of them used crab walk arguments? Which one fed the most enchanting assertions, wrapping his breath around my neck, soft as corn silk? How nimble each archived mirage. This is the time of year to catalog and stash such strands before fall's orange debris flutters to the pavement like feathers, before all the loose promises are snapped back in the purse. To the boys I forget and the ones I don't, thank you for being precise stones firmly embedded in the fordable brooks. Your slippery gleam lifts above all the rushing. And 2 more tiny stories leading from this poem. John Hougsey decided that my voice wasn't old enough to read this poem on his film. So he chose his partner, Eva, who was a lot older than I am. And so when you go to the film, you'll hear Eva reading my poem. And the second wonderful happenstance is during COVID, a few months ago, I received a letter after 55 years from one of those pulsing boys. And it all comes around. The link is YouTube. Look for John Haugsey, JohnHaugse. And the film is Long Ago Maybe One. All one word, Long Ago Maybe One. And I'm sad to say that John died in December. And so we have the film, and this is the first time I've been able to read this poem since he left downstream. Anyway, all right. Sometimes a mermaid has to swim through a reading. So this one's coming in here. When a mermaid comes undone, inconsequential shells, sometimes a chipped agate, pay them daily to the gods of hazard. Stealth is your best suit to unpucker those drenched lips. Hide in reef shadow. Avoid black-clad grief divers who grope after their own hearts. If compromise swims by, as it will, upend that raft of innuendo and guilt. Don't connive or flutter, go deep. If you let it, forgiveness will eventually save you. Thank you. Next poem is from a postcard series. I don't participate in the big August postcard exchange. I'm not sure if it's Oregon only, but there's a big postcard exchange for all 31 days of August. But I do write my own. I try to write my own. And what did I do with them? I do. I write them. I write them on postcard stock. They're short. They're fun. And you can send them or not. But this was an August postcard poem called Buckle. Lost its dark sheen, a wink from matted grass under the idle porch swing. It caught light last when a couple uncoupled, wicker crosshatch imprinting skin. New owners of the house come upon it, scrounge for brass polish and a fresh belt. Who knows? Okay. So the next poem is an ekphrastic poem. It was written to a work on paper by Robert Tomlinson, and I think it's too small to see here, but it was written to a work of art. But the title is Hovering Like Patience. And here again, I just think that this quarantine and the pandemic has hovered over my titles of my older poems, and maybe I'll cast something new under these titles, but I chose this for several reasons. But hovering like patience. Hovering like patience. Serafina, the ferry, founders off the Turkish coast. Glass floats carry fathomless resumes, and 12-tone reveilles taste like low tide. Extinction is getting overpopulated by the hour. Dolphins chase one last squid into oblivion. The splayed anthem of evolution stalls brown pelicans in mid-dive. Noah didn't know Jack when he built that boat. If he'd left the two birds in the bush, nothing would have bitten his hand. Hail to thee, blithe spirit, said the prophet. Saving daylight will not reverse the booby's turnstile. Serafina goes down, pulling Triton from its orbit, and gets the little tyrant to pay dearly. Serenading the perfumed glue of memory, Some will trade tongues' warning for poison's slake. Shovels and picks will moan with the winch, then fold into quandaries and brine. To earth's last lovers, kolai gelsin, may it go well. And that's a Turkish phrase. Anyway, just everyone who's writing, go look at your titles and look how the poem comes fresh again. It's a little difficult subject, but I want to share it. There was a highly publicized murder-suicide a few years ago in 2018. A family, the incident originated in Oregon, and it ended off the California coast, the Northern California coast. And the family's name was Hart, H-A-R-T. And the poem is called Hearts. In name, but none are dear here. Children bucked from no care to these two who adopted 6, stagger stepping them in royal blue t-shirts and out-of-body smiles for the camera. Young hearts lived in fostered isolation, little army of mixed conscripts. Their 2 heads of household in retractable horns led them over the cliff, an upside-down happy hour where they finally escaped into the blue. Foster means to rear, to nourish and cherish. Though rare, abandoned fawns have been known to be safely fostered by a doe, not its mother. Oh, you, dear ones, who sew quilts beside the cradle, wish more newborns a long and happy life. Just, oops. Nonsense. What's more nonsensical? The dream where you broke the lawnmower vacuuming spring shoots in a raised bed? Or sudden fire in a medieval Gothic church? Is it the man who drops a baby over the rail at a shopping mall? Or the kid with 4 accidents still allowed behind the wheel? I say everything's a candidate, and death drives you crazy, fingering his worn-out worry beads. Oh yes, death is going to sound his bell on your street, sooner or later. Here he comes, ready or not, like the good humor man. Okay, not too much commentary here. April Fool's Errand. If I should finally have a stroke of good luck, promise me you'll shrink the wool sweaters to my new size. If I should fall under the spell of numismatists, take all the buffalo head nickels we found in the attic and bribe them to take me back to you. When you come upon a sinkhole on the cheesiest side of the moon, fly there immediately. I will meet you at 8 on the dot. If none of this makes sense, why not go ahead? Tear that insolent tag off the new mattress. Make a new bed. Lie in it. And don't ask how I spelled lion. Okay, a couple more. This next poem, the title is a French title, and this poem's also kind of an ode to body parts. Those of us of a certain age may have encountered floaters in your eyes for some years or several years. My first floaters appeared on my 50th birthday. And who writes a poem to floaters? But I have a friend, a German friend, and he had the most marvelous term for floaters called les mouches volantes. Les mouches, so it literally means flying flies. But les mouches volantes is just such an elegant way to say floaters. And also, I've been studying French for 5 years now with the remarkable Amy Herman in Eugene, Oregon. And it's fun to stick a few French words into a poem tonight. Les mouches volantes. What if floaters are other people's dreams or the transcribed unsaid? Sometimes lazy, these paresseux travelers in a summer sky are random strands adrift, at other times urgent, rushing about the vitreous with telegrams from the soul. Against white, none of them can hide. Against black, they stall, never completely still. Precious floaters, dear dark soldiers from une terre inconnue, muster the extraordinaire inside my eye, you insistent filaments of life. No floaters. Oh, there's one now. Okay. Here's one more older poem with a new take. Again, the title wanted it to be in this group tonight, and the title is Centrifugal Force. It's hard to say. Centrifugal Force. Like a bat, you cling with others to the wall of a barrel, head, hand, back, heels pressed against its sides. Moments ago, you stood on the solid platform, grounded by this excursion to the county fair, but not yet by what it portends. Too frightened by other rides, the bullet or the seasick Ferris wheel, you chose the barrel's tall walls and gradual tilt from horizontal to vertical. You do not to this day know how you can think yourself securely anchored in time, then have everything you knew about gravity vanish in seconds. Who hears your shrieks left back there in frozen hover? And I will end with this poem. It's a newest poem to end with, and it has in the title Catafolk. And Catafolk, C-A-T-A-F-A-L-Q-U-E, for those who don't know, is a support for a casket of a famous person lying in state. And our familiarity with one in this country is the Lincoln Catafolk. And it's been in use for 35 people since 1965 for Lincoln. And it is the most recently RBG and John Lewis were on the Catafolk. But my poem is for the more than 500,000 and all the rest of us. Catafolk tree, fuzzed altar with patchwork of moss among your flanks. We lean into you, and your green sponge cushions our touch. You lie on your side in our woods, retaining an upright dignity. Old growth Douglas fir, fallen or felled, hard to say. You have resisted Old growth Douglas fir, fallen or felled, hard to say. You have arrested your solid history in this hollow of a 5-acre forest. Grandmother and nurse to saplings and seedlings, rising from your still fertile bark, you're the chosen spot where we place small creatures found in all seasons. Into your tender depressions, we lay to rest crow, flicker, squirrel, hare, offerings for the catafolk of you. The time will come when we humans will join them, lie down in your majestic green. Honor the great spirit of renewable loss.
Thank you so much, Quinton, for being here tonight and for that delightful and engaging reading. Thank you for bringing us mermaids and floaters and cartouches and from March to whenever later, which I loved, and postcard poems and virtual broadsides. We want to have a little question and answer. And I have a question to start with, and part of it will be while the studio audience here is thinking of things that they may want to ask. One of the things that is always interesting to know is, who do you read? Would you say influences your work? And who are you reading now?
Who am I reading now is a good question, because
Yeah.
it varies, and it's who doesn't want to pull every book in one's library. But now on my table, that's a wonderful question. Now on my table are James Tate, whom I love, Evan Boland, and Evan Boland. Now I'm getting a brain freeze. Wisław Szymborska, the Polish laureate. On my table, I'm visualizing the new Margaret Atwood, Dearly, and I go to those poets, and C.D. Wright. Okay, C.D. Wright. There's my stack. C.D. Wright, and unfortunately Tate and C.D. Wright and Boland are all gone. They're on that other side. But for the reading them for the compression, of course, but the freshest language, and turning a very common incident into something that's universal. Those voices really help me just get beyond this and this and this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Great list. Are there any questions from studio audience?
That Quinton has a lot on her desk, works by her contemporaries in her poetry groups and stuff, and so she reads and criticizes a lot of work by her colleagues. Yeah.
I had the impression she has a lot of books and a lot of poetry books, which is wonderful.
I'm always curious what got you started writing poetry, and how is that process continuing?
Well, Jane, that is a wonderful question, too. I wasn't writing, I'm not one of those poets who have been writing since they were writing in finger paint. I didn't start writing poetry really until I moved to Oregon 33 years ago. And I blame it on Cecilia Hagen, a wonderful poet and teacher and memoir teacher in Eugene. When I moved here in February of '88, Cecilia was teaching a general writing class at it was a U of O extension at the time in Eugene. And I got here, I didn't know a soul in Eugene or Notai or anyone. I didn't know anyone in Oregon, and I had been writing, but not poetry. So I joined the writing class, and Cecilia's assignments were such that one could answer them in a prose, a short story or a short vignette or a poem. And I started responding to her prompts in poetry. So you could have fooled me. I didn't, but I had been writing, and I also am an editor. And for a long time, right before I left my moneying time to write full time, I was writing short fiction, and I was writing for someone else's voice. I was writing exhibition catalog forwards in the voice of Armand Hammer. So that wasn't me. But anyway, but for poetry, it came with Cecilia and that class, and some of those colleagues, I'm still in a group with them to this day. Some have gone to the other side in that group, but they sustain me, and I think I've left short fiction to the side. One can do some prose poems and keep that prose going, but it's still a poetic take on it. But it just happened recently, 33 years ago.
Well, was that when, and you said when you left the moneying time to write full-time. When did that happen, and how did that go?
Well, that happened in '86. My husband Dennis and I were working in Los Angeles for Armand Hammer. We were the director and assistant director of the Hammer Foundation. And we had a background in art administration and traveling exhibitions in particular. And we had worked at the Smithsonian and had circulated Smithsonian exhibitions or Smithsonian designated exhibitions all over this country and really the world. And so I left knowing that I wanted to write and not be an art administrator for forever. So I left that life, and it was partly thanks to a legacy from my mother, that same mother. I was able to break free of that particular paycheck and start writing. So that was a wonderful time. And then moving to Oregon, just really the Oregon poetry, as you all know, the writing and poetry community in Oregon is sans pareil. It's just fantastic.
So I have a question. You said that you've been studying French for the past 5 years. So do you write poetry in French?
I have not. I've tried to, thanks to my teacher urging me, I have tried to translate a couple of my poems, but really not for the light of day yet. I think it's really a skill, and it's a wonderful challenge. And I think when Poetry Month comes up, I think our French class will be tapping me once again to bring them some poems, but maybe I can use that as a prompt to get something more. It's just a really different and a different part of your brain.
I also have another question about your mother. So she was a kleptomaniac. Are those treasures still in your family?
They are. She lifted things, I don't know how many, but she pretty much lifted ashtrays and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, she didn't take the bedspread and the telephone book and the shower curtain. And, you know, but the ashtray, we all, my sisters and I, have some of those ashtrays. And I think the hotels, the fancy schmancy hotels, knew they were going to lose some of these.
Right.
They were just not bolted down and too beautiful.
That was a great poem.
Thank you. She wasn't a klepto, no.
Can you imagine her going through customs nowadays with a heavy bag?
Yes.
Well, we have a question in the chat about your mother as well from Alan Contreras. And the question is, was your mother also a writer?
Mother was not. She was a stealth writer. We daughters heard that she wrote mystery, kind of bodice ripper mysteries that none of us have seen. I found an essay of hers in a journal where she was definitely trying to go into a different voice, but nothing that was shared with the family. And she was a librarian, and she taught French at our elementary school. So she was definitely read a lot, and but she wasn't a writer, I would say. Alan.
Any other questions here?
I just have one. I'm a dancer, so I'm always really interested in the physical aspect of things. And I'm wondering, do you write your poems or do you type them or do you do both?
I dance them.
I dance poems. Actually, I do, yes.
Oh, good. No, I write long. I definitely, another good question. I need to write longhand to start. So my notebook, I go from the paper or a notebook that's chronological, and I just don't think on the screen.
Yeah.
So it has to be the physical through the pen, and I have fountain pens. I still. It's easier with the regular pen, sometimes pencil too, but I can't just generate something except for email on the screen.
That makes total sense to me.
I do have another question. I really did enjoy the letters to strangers. That really intrigued me because I remember as a young child having pen pals that you didn't know, and you would write these letters. And so that kind of intrigued me, the strangers. So do you imagine this person that you think could be the stranger that when you write the poem?
Sometimes it's too.
And do you imagine them to be a foreign person? I mean, like from outside of the United States, or that couldn't speak your language or know what you are thinking?
I think of anybody, the everyone and the no one, the person you meet on a plane and you tell way too much to. There is a poem in that collection. We tell extraordinary amount of detail to a stranger often, but I just pick a different entity to write to, and it is usually a person, not a creature or something, but that can be a stranger, familiar.
Right. Yeah, very good.
I have another question from the chat, and this is from Amy Miller in Ashland. And that's certainly one of the features of Zoom, is that people from distances can log in.
Yes, Amy, that's wonderful.
And Amy says, "Hi, Quinton. I really enjoy your wordplay, your playfulness. Can you talk about that in context of television? Do you revise toward wordplay, musicality, or does it appear in the first draft?"
Sometimes it is the first draft. A lot of phrases or the sounds of something that I've clipped from somewhere. But I do revise for sound, and I think Judith Montgomery, when she read for the series a while ago, she emphasized how she must read the poems aloud to her mirror, and so I revise to a sound and a vocabulary that might be unusual or different, a word choice different. But also some of the phrases have come as a whole. So that's more complicated than I think I can answer, Amy.
Well, I misread one word here too. It's not television. It's in the context of revision. And you've already...
Revision.
Yeah, you've already kind of touched on that.
Mm-hmm. So it's... usually it's unconnected pieces, and then image, sound, back to the image, correct, better word. Just to keep looking for what. I have an OED, the real old, takes 2 bookcases, and you just go nuts when you see an ordinary old word have 50 different definitions, and what did I really mean in that phrase? So I revise to the image, to the sound, and then I mix it up again. It's a moving thing.
Okay. 2 more things from the chat. From Carolyn Martin. She says, "Congratulations, Quinton. Lovely, inspiring reading." And Another one from Alex Contreras. Splendid as expected. Always worth hearing your voice. So a couple of congratulations off the chat.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Hey,
much.
I would like to ask you to say a little bit about getting books.
Getting
This
books.
is going to be on the credits at the end of the program.
Yes.
But we should say something about it now.
All right, I have books. I have a full-length collection, Mrs. Schrodinger's Breast, from Uttered Chaos, and I have some anthologies. I have 4 anthologies that have many poets that your listeners will. They're either in these anthologies also, or they're a good chance to read a lot of Oregon voices. I have Refuge from Flux, which is an early chapbook from Finishing Line Press, and the 8-poem Stranger series, Stranger by the Hour. And all of those, if someone would like to order or have me sign them, just contact me and at my email address, quinton.hallett@gmail.com, and I'll give you the shipping costs and whatever your total of the books.
Mm-hmm. And that information should be on the screen now, and it's also going to be on the video at the end.
Great.
And it went out to folks when they registered as an attachment of where they could get their books.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So a big thanks to you again. Our poet in next month is Claudia Savage. A big thanks to our studio audience for being here. And thank you all who are watching the live stream tonight and for sending in chat. This is the first time we've actually used chat, the chat feature. And we appreciate getting some comments and some questions from Quinton. And again, thank you to our poet tonight, Quinton Hallett. Yay.
Yeah.